It was all about protecting the building, protecting the collection, protecting the library. The whole project has been in the making for so many years. I can't believe that we're finally towards the end of the first phase. And I'm really thrilled with how everybody's played their part. It's a meeting of minds, really. Everybody's got their specialisms, and that makes usually a good project.
The library here is a very, very significant library in the whole of the National Trust, and the books are amongst the best collection of books and the most interesting historical collection of books that we have. And we actually have a library curator here who studies this library in particular. That's a rarity in the National Trust to have somebody dedicated to one particular library, so that just shows how important it is.
All the interventions and recommendations we've made in terms of repairs have revolved around not just the building but also the environment here. Within the library we have set up a number of sensors monitoring relative humidity, temperature, and we have been doing that environmental monitoring for a number of years. We took some thermal imagery from inside the library, and that threw up some cold spots to the north end which indicated moisture ingress. When we had our scaffold up and access to get really up close to the building, we've discovered that some of the rainwater downpipes were leaking into the building, and being able to relate some of that early investigation work into real repairs was quite interesting. In the past, they wouldn't have had access to that sort of information.
I find there's a really nice juxtaposition of having the old and the new together. So working in a building like this and seeing the books all around us and this historic environment, it gives me a real thrill to be in a working environment like this.
What we found when we opened up some of the attic spaces was that a lot of the timber floor beams, the primary structure holding up the ceilings, was riddled with beetling. So what we have done in terms of attempting to stabilise the ceiling structures is install new floor joists alongside the existing structure, just to help stabilise the floors and ceilings.
You don't know what you're going to find. When you take the floorboard up, there is that anticipation, but you don't know exactly what you're going to find underneath there. In an awful lot of cases, all we found was dust. Dust where the woodworms and the death watch beetles had munched their way through the timber. Lots and lots of dead flies all over the place. There was days of hoovering flies out.
The other thing we discovered when opening up some of the floor structures was that the timber laths holding up the ceilings again were riddled with beetle. We came up with a new method of repair that I hadn't used before, where we raked out the timber laths holding up the decorative ceiling, and that was then replaced with a resin that had stainless steel wires embedded into it and then tied back to the floor joists, and that worked particularly well here at Blickling Hall.
I was really excited actually to go up and see some of the work, because it's in the turret bits we're using really obvious conservation techniques, so where we can see where old and new meet, and I think that's really important so that it tells part of the story of the building, the challenges that it's faced in the form of horrid little insects, but I also think that it's great because it's paired with that more traditional view of conservation, where people expect a really good conservation job to not be seen. So when we look down the room and we know that all this work has happened with the scaffolding up, we know that it's happened in the roof spaces, what we see isn't really that affected by it. So there's this really great pairing between us acknowledging the work that we've done in some of the spaces and it being very visible against this kind of more traditional thing that people expect to see, that this room hasn't been affected. We've done a really excellent job of good conservation that isn't intrusive.
I've been in business 30 years, 32 years actually, and I've been in the trade much longer than that. And every day you find something different, you learn something new. The carpenters working closely with the conservator and also with a structural engineer, they've learned new skills, they've got new ideas in their head that will be moved on to other projects. My bricklayers have learned the use of hot lime on this project.
There's often a lot of preconceptions about quicklime being a very dangerous material. People hear it gets quite hot and it reacts when you introduce water to it. And when we do a mix, we will reach about 150 degrees, sometimes 200 degrees. But that's not really any hotter than your oven in your kitchen, or if you're boiling a kettle. There's very simple precautions you can take, making sure you're wearing eyewear and that you've got gloves on. And quite simply, when you're mixing it, you don't put your hand in it. Lime itself will move with a building, and we refer to it as being self-healing. So when people will often see in old timber frame buildings where they're wonky and they're leaning over, and if they're filled with infill panels, and that could be brick or stone, and they're all bedded with lime mortar, and as the timbers move and the building moves, these lime panels will move with the building. Whereas if they've been replaced with cement, you'll often see that they've just dislodged and they stay very rigid, and they get to the point where they'll just completely fall out. So the cement mortar is brilliant because it's really hard, but it's not working with the building, it's fighting against the building, whereas a lime mortar wants to work with the building and it's helping it all move together homogeneously. It's actually a very exciting time to do with lime mortars at the moment. There's a lot of new research coming out, and we are changing our approaches a little bit.
It is a great privilege to work on these buildings, and not just for me, but also for my employees. They take great pride in all the work they do, and it's great to be part of a team of professionals that can help to keep what is a wonderful building in shape for my grandchildren and their grandchildren to come.
This project has been really interesting, and to work at Blickling, which is one of the most iconic buildings in Norfolk, has just been an absolute dream really. Sitting in this long gallery now with these beautiful lime plaster ceilings and the beautiful brickwork outside, it's been a pleasure to be a custodian for this very short time and do a little bit of work which hopefully is going to see this building through for another couple of 100 years.
This project has been a catalyst for the Beatles Books and Buildings tour, and it's been a great opportunity for us to invite visitors to go up and see the kind of work that's happening, to see why it's important and to see it firsthand, because as I said, those spaces aren't usually visited. And as soon as you say to people, would you like to go and see an attic? I mean, the excitement that comes from that is really great, and it allows people to see those spaces that feel quite secret and quite special.
There's always things you can carry on with, but we know that it's a long game in the National Trust, that we sort of think about these things and say, well, we might be able to do this in 10 or 20 years. But we've been thinking about Blickling for that length of time and what we need to do here. So it's great we've been able to get to this point so far, but it will always continue. The big change which we are anticipating is the way the house and the library in particular are heated. So at the moment we have a recently installed new water source heat pump here at Blickling, which takes heat from the lake, it concentrates that up, and it's fed around the hot water piped heating system of the house. We want to improve the controls over that so that we can deliver the right amount of heat to the library and to other areas of the house. So there's some work planned on the heating system to make that more flexible in how it functions for heating the different elements of the building.
What's the next step? How are we going to share what we've done? We need to be getting the books out of the presses. Now we've made their environment safe, we need now to share the books themselves. So these next steps are all going to be a bit more out there. We can't afford to let any harm come to this. But also the building is important too, so it's a win-win situation.